Afternoon. It is Monday, November 29th, and this is a work session of the Board of Supervisors regarding the American Rescue Plan Act. We have our agenda for today. Just want to see about any updates from the previous meeting or if there was anything else. I think we've got through all the internal applications, just kind of checking before we go forward and with the external ones. I can't hear you. I'm sorry.
There were some additional updates where you want to go through the ones that are some additional questions.
I'm sorry, I don't recall the
questions we had the last meeting.
Oh, a couple of questions that we had the last meeting.
Right.
Yes, thank you. So I know we had a question, at least I know two of them that we had from the last one on some of the applications were about the HVAC. And I reached out to ISAC, and my understanding, since those projects have not started yet, that those would be, they hadn't started previously, that they would be a reasonable expenditure under ARPA dollars for phase 2 and phase 3. Were one thing that we had. The other question was whether we needed to draw down those funds immediately when they become available, or we have another 30-day time frame to receive those dollars. From what I received from ISAC, they have no data that says that they would have to draw down those funds immediately. That would probably have like a 30-day timeline again. Were there other questions, Sandra? Because those were the two that I initially had.
Yes, I emailed Joey a couple of questions that he answered. That asked if for the permanent front barriers, if the 27,500 was additional or excluded. Similar question for the HVAC, 198,000, was it included or additional?
Okay, based on those applications that we were unclear of on there. Okay. All right, thank you.
Lisa Marshall had emailed me questions to follow up, so.
Yeah, I had questions too, so I got them.
All right, let me get back to my notes on those. So. Mike, why don't you come on up? Lisa, you had those questions that you
Mike
know,
probably brought them, didn't you? You bring them?
And when you talk about an application, please give the letter so we can get to it.
I'm sorry, what's that?
So
The letter.
The letter of the application. Yeah.
So like the internal ones were type A through C.
Here's the letter that we're referring to.
I got so many on the board.
So I guess the first question was that Lisa had emailed me was on item A, Hickory Grove wastewater. Lisa asked if there was an updated cost opinion on this and how many phases this is. I do not have an updated cost opinion. And that requested amount is for phase 1. There may be additional phases. I don't have cost opinions on those. Those would come at a later date. So this initial phase is just to abandon the existing lagoon and construct a new forced main line from a new vault, if you will, and connect that to the existing line at Twin Anchors, near Twin Anchors RV Park, which connects to the city.
What would phase 2 have in it then?
What was that?
What would phase 2 have in it then?
Well, there were, golly, a number of years ago, we had developed a few phases that it connected different pieces of the park. So at the moment, the only facilities at the park that are connected to that lagoon are the beach house, the residence, and the shower house. So phase one would be taking those existing things and connecting those. Phase two would have been connection from other parts of the park into that system. So i.e. the maintenance shop over to that system, the lodges over to that system, etc.
So phase one would be the functionality we have now, but
Correct.
hooking into 20 acres and then therefore
Correct.
colo as opposed to the lagoon. Okay, thank you.
And you also, so you have not gotten an updated, so we have on here the last data cost estimate was 2016.
That's correct.
So we don't have anything more recent.
No, and that cost opinion was, I didn't bring it with me, 450,000. So I have provided an inflationary amount to that.
So the 700,000 is your increase over the
Correct.
450.
Correct.
And what was the additional 1,000?
Your cost, yeah, then you've got attached cost opinion for phase one, further in part phases 2 through 5 have a cost opinion from 2014 and a cumulative total cost of 100,000.
Right. So they were fairly small cost opinions at that time. I would anticipate that those would go up as well. That was 6 years ago. So we'll ask ourselves a question again on those other facilities. Do we want those to be connected to this forced main system? Or do we want a standalone septic system at those facilities? i.e. Advanced level system, like Vantex or Coco system or something like that.
Any other questions? Hey,
The next one I had then is on item B, edge of field removal. It's a question about the number of sites, budget, etc. I believe there's 25 sites or 25 tile outlets to be treated. And those are on 6 landowners or 7 landowners in 3 up 12s. And some of those are to be shared with the city. I should say some of those are to be taken by the city and not taken by us. The city of Ames would fund, those are the total number, that's the total number of sites in the project right now. The city of Ames will be asked to fund all of those sites that are in HUC 12s, which are upstream of their water treatment plant. We would be asked to fund the remainder of those sites. So at the moment, the ones that the ones that are in the city include HUC 12 of Kegley and Bear Creek. We've got 3 landowners in those 2 watersheds that are included. And then we've got the HUC 12 of East Indian Creek is the one that we would be requested the funding from.
And how many sites?
So the ones in East Indian Creek are 13 sites, 13 tile outlets on 4 landowners. Of those sites, 10 of them, 10 of the 13 do not have any federal money going toward them. The others do. Of those 10 sites that don't have federal money, the total cost on those sites is $35,700. Now, there is a caveat with that, in that one of those landowners has 8 sites on one farm. And that number is predicated on a more expensive conservation practice. It's predicated on bioreactors, which you know are more expensive than saturated buffers, which is a comparable, less expensive practice. We anticipate that that landowner is going to be able to switch over to saturated buffers. If that happens, then that number will come down significantly. What's that?
Then will you know that?
I hope Callie, we hope to have know it by now, but say another 3 weeks, 2 weeks. This is also phase year 1 of this project. We would anticipate that this project become an annual project with a comparable number or an increased number of sites every year. So I think it's reasonable to expect that there would be a similar funding request or larger in coming years for this same practice, this same program.
So I'm a little confused. You have your, I think you have your budget. You put 50,000. So are you saying that it's more likely to be around 35,000 or less, or?
It's gonna be 35 or less, correct, for this year.
Because of
For
the
this
fact
year.
that of the federal dollars, right?
Correct. Some of those have federal money in.
So if you take away the
We
ones
had
that
to
have
take
federal
those
dollars
out.
out,
Right,
the
right, right.
35.7 is what is more
And
accurate.
that's just on the 10 out of the 13, that would be 35,700. You
Correct.
said there were 25 total outlets, so that's where I'm a little,
Some of the 25 are being covered by the city of Ames.
City of
there could be
Ames,
7 of them.
correct.
Okay,
So if that one site, that complicated site stays with the bioreactor, that would be landowner's responsibility to refresh that when it needed to happen. We wouldn't be taking on that responsibility.
Correct. Correct. That would be the landowner's responsibility.
We have no, we're not taking our responsibility past the first year.
No,
Okay, thank you, because it will be a 15-year refresh.
correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on that one?
So I assume you're putting money for next year into the regular budget request,
Yes,
and this is not a 3-year budget request, then this is just a single year request.
this is just this year. I'd be happy to entertain more, of course.
So is it a request for 50,000 or is it a request for the 35?
$1,700.
I wrote it as a request for 1 year. Now, since we know more now than we do when I wrote it, we can bring that request down. However, you know, if you wanted to look at it as a request for 50, it can go towards future years as well. So that's completely up to you.
Thanks.
Any more questions on this one?
The next one I had a question on was item C, Mcfarland Lake renovation, including siltation basin construction. We had budgeted money. We had money budgeted in the current FY to do design work on this. The question was, I guess that we moved 47,000 and moved that out of the budget. I'm looking at Lisa for help here. Moved it out of the budget into ARP funding.
Correct.
But the request says 55,900, original amount budgeted. Contract with Shive Hattery is 88,000. So she's questioning questioning those funds. We signed a contract with Shive Hattery to do the design on that project at correct 88,000. And at that time, we said that conservation would fund a portion of that out of the trust fund. And so the balance after that funding out of the trust fund left 47,000. And that's what went into the general fund budget.
Budget amendment. Correct.
Correct.
So it's 47,000 is the request then.
Correct. My understanding now, since I put this in, we did get a cost opinion back. I chatted with Sandra and she said that we won't entertain any more requests. So that cost opinion came in at 1.2 million for the construction.
So I had down per C that you were initially requesting 55,900, but it's more 47.
Correct.
Okay.
And can it be completed by 2026?
I'm sorry.
Can it be completed by 2026?
Oh, the design for this amount. Yeah, this will be done this fiscal.
Okay.
Any other questions on C?
Okay, the next one was on item O,
Bank stabilization.
stream bank stabilization, South Skunk River. There are, and Lisa had asked if there was any federal funding in this. There is not. There's no federal funds. This is two project locations. One is near Peterson Park, the other one is near Anderson Access. The one at Peterson Park is under contract now and has a need for local funds of 11,500. that is being matched by private landowner funds and by Department of Natural Resource funds. The other project is in the permitting stages. And I have, also, all I have is a cost opinion on that one. And that cost opinion is $38,000.
So I had done out here, your request was 50,000, but it sounds like it's actually 38.
49.5.
49.5,
Oh, okay, because you're adding in that 11.
two projects.
Right.
Okay,
So originally you had budgeted 25,000 each.
Right.
So one came in much less and the other came in much greater.
We're
and
anticipating that the one
coincidentally
will come
came
in.
to about 50.
Yeah.
Okay. So you have other funding for the first one. Do you have other funding for the second one?
No, not yet.
But you might.
We may. It's doubtful. The state has already indicated that they don't have any available. So we may end up finding a little bit of additional funding for that, but chances right now aren't very good.
Okay.
Where's the location for the second? What did you say?
Where is
What the
the
location of the second?
north, it's between Ames and Story City on 150th Avenue. It's Anderson access.
Okay.
Those were the only questions that Lisa had sent. Were there any others on any of those?
I would know on F, part of Iowa Trails, hard surface eligibility question, gray area question mark. What in the world does that mean?
I didn't send any questions to Mike regarding D or F.
Okay, same thing then. You don't think,
D, and Mike and I talked about this, D is a debt payment, and we are pretty sure that's not gonna fly.
yeah,
And F, I think our conversation was, it's pretty unclear to us whether trails are part of.
great.
I know you guys have been getting different opinions on that. Some saying that they do view it as eligible and some saying that they don't. We know that there are other counties that are going to be using it for trails, trail improvements. So, of course, I would hope that you would find it eligible, but I understand where we are with the rules right now too.
I looked up this new guidance dated November 15th that came out that I was reviewing. It does identify some areas of specificity, but it doesn't specifically say trails in it. So I think that's where it continues to be that gray or that gray area where they do identify some other.
I think your other question at that point in time was, would this be considered an ongoing,
Right.
since we've, had how many phases already?
Well, the reason I put that request in was simply to hard surface all of the Heart of Iowa Trail. And then that, you only have to do that once in our lifetimes. So no, that wouldn't be ongoing. That would just be to complete that trail.
But the point is, there's been numerous phases on that trail.
Correct.
How does that get looked at? Does that get looked at as a continuation project
Right.
or as a new project?
Oh, I see.
I think was the main
That's
question
right.
we were struggling with.
Right.
I feel like
similar question with the Mcfarland Lake renovation as well. If it's phase one is really one thing and done, or if it's one part of larger project that will actually take much longer.
Well, yeah, so clearly on that one, right now, we're in the engineering phases. And so that's always a precursor to the construction phase. And so, yeah, that is, I guess you could look at that as two phases. But that the engineering is the precursor to go through, to get to a point where you can do a public bid, which we're required to do on a project of that magnitude.
And I think that one's looked at, that one we looked at as this is the beginning. Whereas with the Heart of Iowa Nature Trail, it's not the beginning.
Right, but again, my concern was that it's the beginning of a project that could take longer.
Right.
Than we have.
Yes, there's nothing that says we have to fund phase two with ARPA just because we funded phase one.
Exactly.
Yes, yes.
Because quite frankly, I mean, it could end up in the situation that the Hickory Grove water system started the project how many years ago saying, this is what we want to do, and this is the cost approximate, all
Yeah.
that, and then it just gets basically shelved until the point in time where it's going to get started.
And that, it's possible. This one, we're the only stakeholder.
Right.
That one,
That was
the
dependent on a
delay is
whole lot of other.
predicated on other external
Right.
forces.
Right.
Well, we don't have those at play with the Mcfarland Lake project.
So how long when do we have to have the money spent by?
2026.
And we have to have it obligated by 2024 and spent by 2026.
So let's just say for conversation, so you said the cost estimate is 1.2 million. Am I looking at the right one, the right project?
Yeah,
Okay. Could the whole project be committed and then completed by 2026?
the only impediment is funding. We'll have the design done. The design will be done yet this winter. And so then the only thing it's predicated on from that point is how soon we can find the money. I created the conservation budget for FY23 has a couple scenarios in it. One scenario is that the Hickory Grove sewer money, which is in the conservation reserve right now, not the general fund.
No, it got moved. Well, it was budgeted in the conservation reserve. We moved it to the ARPA funding at this correct time.
Correct. So one assumption that I built the budget on was saying that Hickory Grove money stays ARPA money. If that happens, then I built a budget that, and the conservation board will consider that here next week. But built a budget that said, if that Hickory Grove money stays ARPA money, then we can do this lake, we can commit to this lake project in FY23. There's caveats to that. That does ask for additional general fund money, but nowhere near the 1.2. So it splits that cost up between conservation funds and general funds. And I should have brought that with me. Don't quote me on this number, but I think it was somewhere around 500,000. The general fund asked for somewhere around 400,000 or 500,000 of the 1.2. That scenario would fund it in this fiscal year. assuming that there's no ARPA money that goes into that. If there's ARPA money that goes into that, then, that could happen again much quicker. But the whole project, once we commit to construction, is probably a 2-year project, 1.5-year project.
Other questions, Mike?
Thank
Okay,
you.
thanks.
Thanks,
Thanks.
Mike, appreciate it.
Barbara, obviously Barbara's here too. And then Micah is on the Zoom as well for some additional questions after Mark. After Barbara.
I'm sorry, for the tech,
Scanner.
The tech. aid.
oh, the tech scanner, okay, gotcha, okay. Yeah, and then someone said they had trouble hearing Sandra, so we just need to make sure that we come up closer to the mic each time we speak. It's always hard to remember that. If we speak. So you're good, Lisa, but if we have anyone who wants to speak from, we'll try to remind everybody to come forward.
So that leads into my project, actually. It's just improvements for the video and the sound here in the boardroom. Tim, right, from CTI is here. I didn't know what questions you had. Sandra just asked if it would work with Zoom, and then she said there were other questions. So I thought if there were technical questions, Tim could answer those. What this project does is it puts a camera in the back of the room instead of using the owl. See, we've done well with the owl, but it was intended for smaller conference rooms. And so maybe 3 or 4 times a month, I get complaints that, oh, the owl didn't move, or we can't hear the sound very well. So what this will do is it'll put a camera in the back of the room, and then you'll be able to use your gooseneck speakers, because right now they're turned off
Right.
because there's too much feedback with the owl. So the owl will go away, the new camera will go in, and then the sound will be much better. But Tim and I were just talking, so if we continue to have a presentation table, the camera in the back room will just show the back of our heads. So he suggested maybe we put another camera over there to add to this. And I don't know, Tim, how much more do you think that would add to the
Yeah,
project?
it's probably gonna about double the estimate that I gave you.
So it'd be about a $13,000 project instead of 7.
And the other thing we will do as part of that is make sure the audio system works the way it was designed to work.
That would be awesome.
Because right now it's shut off.
It's pretty evident right now that it's not working very well.
So,
Right. So we would be able to get all the microphones and everything into the Zoom platform to be able to get that streamed in a high quality way.
I think the only reason you have
How
a
did-
presentation table though is because of the Zoom. So if the presenter goes to their normal places, then
Yeah.
one camera wouldn't be.
One camera would work.
I would think so, but I don't, I'm just throwing that out there. Because that was made for presentation and if you can present there.
Uh-huh.
And it would be a wide angle, so it would pick up most of the front of the room.
And we could set that up so it actually triggers too. There's a little bit of a lag on that a little bit. So if 2 of you are having a conversation, the camera would just go to kind of a wide shot. Because we don't want the camera to be bouncing around too much. That's where 2 cameras are really nice because we can have a wide shot to go to. And then a zoomed in shot if you're speaking or someone else is. So we kind of switch back and forth. But obviously, that's a much more expensive option, and that's up to you all if you think it's worth that.
Does somebody have to man the cameras?
No.
So that does that,
No,
or?
no. Everything will be controlled through the Zoom meeting. So if you have a presentation on there, you can share your screen. Your presentation will be up on Zoom, and then your camera will be just another shot. So really, all we would be doing with with enhancing the audio, getting the audio tied in right, and adding the camera, you're just adding a really, really good webcam to your room. That's all we're doing.
And how flexible is the system? If we were to go with one camera now and later down the road decide we really could use a second camera?
Simple addition. Yeah, it's very simple to add. A little bit of programming, the hardware for the camera, and you're good to go.
It'd be double, it'd be another $7,700.
Probably close, yes. Yes, to add a second camera. Yeah, and I did notice you've got some microphones hanging back here, and I don't know if those were intended to be used or if they've ever been used. I don't know. Generally, we see in boardrooms and similar rooms that we don't try to mic the gallery area, just because there's conversation out here that does not need to go out to the Zoom feed.
That's why we share them out.
Regularly.
So I don't know really what the intent of those was. If it was to reinforce audio into the front of the room,
No.
I don't know, because usually you've got a lectern or a presentation desk area. So those would probably just be permanently disabled. Would be my recommendation. We could even take them out.
What was the purpose of those?
Initially, Rick wanted it so that people could stand in the audience and talk and not have to come up to the presentation table. But then we were getting coughing and chattering, and so we're like, oh, shut them off. We don't really need those. And the camera wouldn't have been on them anyway, so, and that's back when we had a camera on a tripod, so we have just disabled them and they can go away. And like rustling, you could hear a lot, you actually heard more from the audience than we did from up front, so
Oops,
we
sorry.
don't need that, and sneezing.
Yeah, I mean, the big thing, the audio system's only as good as the microphones in placement with whoever's speaking. So it's a little bit of a training, maybe a little bit of a retraining. If you want to be heard, you've got to be in a microphone.
Right.
So, and the better you are at doing that, the better the quality is in the room and those listening from virtual.
Thank you. I appreciate that information.
Does that answer your
Yeah.
questions?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for coming.
You bet.
And I think our last questions were answered by regarding Joby with the two locations.
And what was the answer again? I'm sorry, I didn't catch it.
No, not me. Yeah, thank you.
Looking past me. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
The question was on two of them. The human services I was the project budget. Did that include the 68,000 for the contingency and architect engineering? It's an additional, so it'd be 400 plus the 68. I think was the, let me open the email. Make sure I got the other one. Oh, I have, yeah, it was the Justice Center HVAC faces. And the front counter barriers, both of which are the same answer. The contingency and the architect engineering fees are in addition to the
Okay.
project budget.
That's 70. Second. Looking at G first. Do that, look at them one at a time.
Sure.
Counter barriers. 72,000. What's that? I don't know, 25,000.
Yeah, because it, from what it is currently budgeted as, if you're in the notes, since that project was budgeted in this current FY,
Mhm.
animal control and the engineers building have decided they wanted to have them, but they originally did not. So that brought the cost of the project up. Plus, a lot of the people in this building, the departments and offices have changed what they originally wanted for permanent front counter barrier to. Some of them were just simply replaced like what the plexiglass does to a more secured front counter, so.
So is the total cost 72,000 plus 125,000
No.
plus 27,500?
It's 125,000 plus the 27,500.
Okay, so it's 152,500.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. I think that's just me not understanding the form for sure. Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
And then H is Justice Center.
Yes. It is same thing. 198,000 is in addition to the 1.25.
So forget the 1.37 and it's 1.25 plus 198.
So in your initial application, I'm gonna go back to G just for a question. You put 72,000, that was just for the admin building, and then,
I didn't
No, no,
put 72,000 on my
72,000.
application.
That was what was originally budgeted.
Oh.
I think that
that was a
kinda
glitch,
got-
that's a glitch
Yeah,
area.
yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that should have been all along, what was on the application, the 125,000.
Yes, yes, yes.
That's,
And the same with H, the 1,347,000 was what was originally in the budget. But what is actually budgeted for in the application is this 1.25. And then the additional 198.
So this is phase 3.
There's 2 and 3.
This is 2 and 3.
Would you consider them standalone? Like, you didn't have to do phase 2 and 3, you did phase 1,
Did phase 1, it's done.
it's done, okay.
Originally was going to be actually in 3 separate phases, but COVID threw everything off because we couldn't get equipment. So we carried.
Yeah, all that, but I think the question behind the question is it a continuation project? Because that then gives us pause, but you're saying phase 1 was phase 1 was phase 1. Done.
Phase 1 was Justice Center as well, right?
Right.
So what was it?
The jail, specifically just the jail.
so what is phase 2 then?
Phase 2 is jail support in the sheriff's office.
So it's a different section of the
Right.
building.
Right.
And then phase 3 is the courthouse.
Okay, okay, so that's how I kind of explained it to Jamie Cashman with ISAC, and he said, yes, if it is a new project, which I would see that while it's calling it in phases, it's a new section of the building.
Right.
He said, as described, he would say yes, that would be something that would be allowed under utilizing ARPA funds for.
And then I. Thank you. That's I. HSC,
Yes.
and was it? 400,000 and 68,000 separately are those?
It'd be the same thing again, be 468 total.
Okay, gotcha.
Just my interpretation of the application.
Okay, thank you.
It don't bother me.
I know.
So the HSCH back was going to be submitted for FY '23.
Correct.
So it's not really even approved by the board yet.
Yeah,
Right.
it was going to be in the FY '23 budget request. All right,
Thank you.
you bet, no problem.
And then that's it.
Oh, yes. Yeah, is it who is it? Oh, Micah, I'm sorry. Okay,
I know.
yeah, and that's for the tech scanner, that M, I believe, is that correct? Okay.
Can everybody hear me okay?
That's fine, Micah.
Hello. Yeah, I believe that the question was whether there was any ongoing costs with that. The answer to that is I don't anticipate anything beyond annual registration of that device with IDPH. That looks like, originally I thought that would be a $600 per year registration, but now it looks like it's only going to be $100 per year.
No ongoing maintenance costs on it?
The quote contains 5 years
Okay.
of warranty, parts and labor, so any issues should be covered under that.
For how long is that warranty?
5 years.
Any additional questions for Mike on that one? I don't have any additional. Oh, great. Thank you very much for the
Thank you.
clarification. Thank you. Okay. With that, are we ready to go on to start reviewing the external applications? And I guess my question is going to be, how do we want to go about doing this? Do we want to do it as we kind of talked about, was it last week, of kind of chunking that up, like, hey, you know, we have like all housing together, wastewater together, or do you just want to go 1 through 37 that's listed on here, which
Which is easier for you.
is easier?
Yeah.
Well, I took your advice to heart and segmented mine out. And I have not completed the whole list, but I've completed 2 of the areas. Whatever. What do you guys think? What's your preference? What do you do?
Before we get into it, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Staff came and gave answers to questions that we had in our last session. How do we want to, before we even get to the questions, so we don't forget it, how do we want to handle questions that we have of externals? Do we want to have the questions sent to them and then have them come and give us the answers, either Zoom or in person?
I think that would probably be easier to do because I don't know that we'll have questions on every single one, or we
Yeah.
may have more questions for one than another, and that would kind of help with kind of scheduling.
Sure. And
As well.
I think if we do that, whoever sets that up, that we ask the questions of them, but make sure they understand we're not asking for a presentation, we're just asking for them to either Zoom in or come to us to answer questions that we've submitted. Because otherwise we might have 37 hours.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
And I think it's good, they understand that.
yeah.
If they get here, they think we want a presentation, and we say, oh, no, we just have one question for you. That's not fair to them.
Right,
So
right.
I just wanted, let's do it by topic.
Okay, okay.
If that's how Lisa started it out, I don't know.
I don't know. Did you guys do it by topic or did you do it just in order?
I just went through the main order.
I'm not.
I went in order, but you guys, I'll go over.
I went in order and I labeled each of them by topic.
again.
Okay.
So,
I have 4 pages of notes and I've got numbers I can flip around. It doesn't matter, however you
yeah,
want.
I can too, I can too. So do you have it all listed on how you broke it all down? Because I have some, I don't have them all broken down into particular areas. I have A, B, C, and D, but I have several that I haven't put into a category area yet.
Well, like I have the water ones marked as water, housing, marked as housing. Food. Marked as
Childcare.
food, childcare, marked as childcare. The one before we get started also, it just feels like, there are several requests for similar things. And it just makes me question whether some of these projects can't work together to make whatever funding we're able to send that direction more powerful. Just putting that out into the ether because it just kept kind of coming up as I was reading.
Well, why don't we go by categories? I don't have them all of mine list by categories, but I can just list off the letters and we'll just go through. So if you want to go by wastewater first.
Water.
Yeah, let's,
So number 2.
number 2. Yes, please, thank you. Beta's asking for $120,000 to help with their sewer system.
The lift station.
Right, right.
My question on this one, the budget shows, if you look at the last page, the application, the request is 182, but it carries down to 120. And the request out front is 120. So I guess I was just confused as to what the difference was.
And they also, on the right-hand side, show gap total 120.
Right.
Which matches the narrative.
Yeah, right, and matches the request. So, yeah.
There's a 933 on the spread and there's a
95 on that, yeah. So I'm not sure how much, unless 933 is what they got in ARPA funds and 995 is what the city's putting toward it. So it's got other funds in addition to the ARPA to put toward it. That was what I was thinking.
Isn't there some place on this where we asked them how much they got? in that fund?
We asked them if they
Yeah.
received ARPA funds.
Yes,
Asked, you know,
and they actually gave us an amount.
Yeah.
They said in their narrative
They
that the
received-
city received a total of 995.
Right. And that the estimated cost of this is less
see 933.
I do too.
Look on page, the very first page of the application, it says,
Yes, under intended purposes, use of the fund.
yes,
Right, but then
right, but then in the
Now it
application
says
is
They
different,
say they got 5,983.
yeah.
So which is it? So they're at, are they basically, so it's a 933 or 995 was Nevada's ARPA.
Yeah, because they show, what, the last column, they show the 995
Mhm.
for the city.
Mhm.
And then if it's city ARPA 933. Does that mean, are they only putting 933,000 of their 995?
Of their 995, that was how I read that, but I don't know that that's true.
But then it's,
resolution started question.
so if you look at that that budget page, where it
Uh-huh.
shows city match, it shows 933,000.
Mhm.
And then you go over to the last column, it says city match 995,000. So my question is, are they saying of 995,000? Are they only putting 933,000 towards this project? I'm confused by
Yeah,
their numbers don't add up, so I'm confused. So for me, then it just kind of calls a little into question. Are there other numbers that are off on, just because they're not matching up from the narrative portion to their budgeting?
So if you take the 1,115,000, you subtract the 120 that they're asking from us, it gets to the 995. So
The resolution they submitted to the city council, does
yes,
the last line say they're allocating full ARPA funding allocation of the project?
the-
This line right here,
Right.
the resolution,
is that 995?
995.
Okay, we'll assume it's 995 then, and that they're basically wanting to fund 100% of it with their ARPA funds and our ARPA funds. And
Make up the difference,
we're making up the difference.
basically.
They're asking us to make the difference up, and so it's all 100% ARPA funded. Did they say what they would do if we didn't? The 120?
We need to limit the buy down 10% of the new housing on the north side of town. So the funding that they've allocated towards the buy down of the lots would be reduced.
How much were they putting in to buy down? That was landscape mounts. I don't see that as an item on their budget though.
What was that question again? I'm sorry.
I was looking for them, how much? Wait, were they buying down with ARPA funds or other city funds?
the ARPA funds are going 100% to the lift station.
Okay. so
Is my
they-
read.
Yeah, they had some funds in their budget they were going to put towards it, now they'll put towards buying down lots.
Now, the way I read it, they would buy down fewer lots, and the money that they would use to buy down more lots would go towards the lift station.
If they didn't get their full funding.
I don't have any other questions on this one. Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's all right.
Number 4.
I put a note on this one. I did not rank this one. I don't think it's eligible. It's a debt repay.
Debt repays are not.
I had the same information.
You had the same information.
I agree with you.
I tried to determine what category, expense category they fall in while I was ranking them or rating them. And
Right.
that was
Yeah.
my,
That was my question too. So number 5 then.
My question is, how are 5 and 6 related? I can look at them at the end of the day.
My question on number 5 related to irrigating the athletic fields. That's in their narrative and but then I didn't see that in their plans. And I also sent up some red flags for me about whether that would be eligible or not.
Clear to me.
Let's talk about the athletic complex. They tie it with updated some of the old undersized water lines in town, so I wonder if they aren't kind of combined somehow. That if you're doing one, you just will do the other because they're off the same lines. I don't know. It isn't itemized by goal, so.
That might be some, this might be one where we need further clarification from them. Because it does seem kind of intertwined.
Are they
All of
lining
my-
these or replacing them?
Are they what?
Lining or replacing?
Looks like it says, no, it says goal number 3 is to replace the water lines.
Okay.
I didn't think that in any of, this is one of my questions on all of the Collins ones, is it doesn't appear as though, they said they got ARPA funds, but I don't see an amount anywhere along here as to how much they got in ARPA funds.
Budget just says cash.
Right, and then,
And what is in kind? 250,000 in kind match, what was that? That was the block grant?
Different portions of the project based upon the amount of funding that we receive, those delays will be dependent on support of other funding such as CDBG and or the dismissal of our current bond obligations through our TIF.
yeah, in the source, it says that the city is, though LMI qualified to receive CDBG grant, that would cover the city's contribution, so that would be the. But yeah, they
Yeah, I would
answer,
call it in kind, that's not my definition. of in kind.
they answer all of them with, yes, they did receive ARPA funds, but
So
I
the
don't know.
question is, how much did you receive in ARPA funds and what is any of it going to this project or?
well, that was a question I had.
That's definitely.
Yeah.
If my spreadsheet is correct, they have just shy of $70,000 they're getting from 16 $69,594. But again, that's not reflected in the applications.
Is that the ISAC spreadsheet?
Yeah, I think this is from that original, maybe League of Cities.
Yeah.
I've had it for quite a while and not updated it.
Yeah, I remember that spreadsheet. It's been out a while. Maybe we need to ask them what their number is.
Yes, I've written down how much received in ARPA and how much going towards this particular project.
And then,
I mean,
you
they've
know,
got several projects, so they,
yes, I put, that was one of my questions, since the 1.3 is pretty obviously debt repay. I did not get that from any of the rest of them specifically, but I think that's a valid question.
you mean number 4 is debt repay. Or number
4, yes, I'm
four.
sorry.
Yeah, yeah.
But my question would be, are any of these other ones, have they already incurred debt on any of the rest of them, just to be on the safe side?
Right.
My question is, CDBG is from federal funding. What are the implications of the CDBG grants?
Do they have CDBG on all of them or just on 5?
I don't remember, I'd have to go refresh my,
I think they said it a couple times.
looked at these before Thanksgiving, I was like.
Yeah, I did too. So I was trying to look at them today and
I looked at them Sunday. That was the next thing.
We talked now about having more 4-day weekends, so.
Oh, so number 6 is where they talk about lining.
Okay.
I apologize, it wasn't a mix of both.
so you jumped ahead to number 6.
Yeah, Linda had asked, are they talking about replacing or lining? And I said, I think it's both. But that's because I
Gotcha.
was
Number
mixing
6,
up.
they're talking about lining.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
and in number 6, they also talk about CDBG grant.
Yeah, I just have noticed.
Can you move forward, Alyssa? Because I know the people on, who have questions, they can't hear us.
I've spread out, so.
No, you're fine. I bring our tables.
Sure, it might be easier to bring us another table.
I can move up to, my question on number 6 is, have they already started the project?
We've already completed a vast majority of the overall wastewater improvements.
Yeah, so
I don't know then if it would be eligible.
that's my question. It's like if they've already started and done a bulk of the project.
Is it, you know, or is it in phases, or is it, you know?
Is it
I don't know.
phases? I couldn't tell from that, but. I'll move my stuff up.
Oh,
No, I'm
shrink
good. I'll
up.
sit behind you. I'm good.
So I
can
guess
come
the
up if
question
need
is,
stuff.
yeah, is it completed? If it's in phase, is this also debt repayment? I know it's a little, I mean, debt repayment, I was just trying to look in the notes here that said, no, you can't do that. Wastewater, they seem to have a little bit more latitude in other areas. Because that's one of the areas that are pretty clear of what can be funded, are wastewater, broadband.
Yes,
you know,
it's not near as, ambiguous as some of the other areas.
Right. But I would still call it a question, especially if it's got federal money coming in. Could you use that? Is this debt repayment?
Yeah, we didn't ask, has your project been started? We said, can your project be fully committed by December 2024? Can it be completed by December 2026? If you've already completed it, you could answer yes to both of those.
Right.
So it doesn't give us information.
I think number 6 is majority of it's done, but that's just how I read their application.
It's hard to tell for some people as to how far into it they were, having already started.
Right.
percent water loss is huge.
Yeah.
It is, yes, I saw that, yes.
Gee. It says, the question, are you working in partnership or collaboration with other entities? We are not working with any partners, but we have received financial support to help pay for the cost of upgrades we have already completed. So what upgrades have you already completed and you need to fill those out?
Right, and then if you look, I mean, if we just says with our match, we've already completed a vast majority of the overall wastewater improvements in town. The funding already raised can be described as our match investment. So under 6, are they asking for the portion to complete their project?
Yes, that is what they're doing.
Doing.
We've completely redesigned and built a new lagoon as well as started the lining process of our sewer lines.
Right,
Unfortunately, we've only been able to complete about half of the sewer lines. This grant request, we intend to finish the lining project.
That's one of my questions that's already started. I mean, I know they don't have funding for the remaining of it, but they're already in the middle of the project. So I don't know how they look at
yeah, so it's, again, more questions to ISAC if they,
that. And if they started it but haven't finished paying for it.
It could be
Or
that.
haven't even started paying for it, is it okay
right,
to pay?
That question?
Then 8 is the next city of town.
I wasn't all sure what they were going to do to mitigate the impact of flooding. They said they were going to do it, but I didn't get a what out of it. How are you gonna impact, mitigate, and minimize the impact of flooding? Talks about the actual completion of improvements and planning.
That we have already started.
So the overall project for the north side of our town is already 83% complete. Having this final roof from Story County will help us facilitate that. Portion of the work has been completed with funding from the Community Development Block Grant. Other than that, we have been doing most of the work in-house.
so I think another question, just as we see a number of their grants that the CDBG is that an allowable? When they say no other federal funding, is CDBG still allowed or not?
And I think the other two, they just said they might use CDBG, but this one, they said they already have. That sounds like the part they haven't done, they need to start designing. It's the engineer phase. So it's phases again.
Right, so it'd be in the southern portions. They haven't started.
Yep.
Started that, so since since they've been currently working on the northern half, but the southern half, they haven't even designed or anything yet, that may be seen as a whole separate project, because they don't even have that.
I still like to know what they're doing. They just talk about they're gonna mitigate.
Right, it's
They
not
don't
real
talk about
clear.
what are they doing? So I'm would be wanting to know a little bit more about, tell us about the project. Tell us what your strategies are.
Is it the culvert?
You know, I thought we asked, I mean,
It says the reconstruction of the Fourth Avenue culvert will begin the spring of 22 and completed by June. That's after the engineering phase. So I thought they were putting a culvert. Re-engineering it or whatever, reconstruction of the culvert.
No, a storm, now, looking at the budget, it's got a stormwater project. And it's got a retention pond engineering. It's not actually creating that big. Yeah, if you go back and forth, you can kind of piece it together, but it's not written very clearly to understand it. Kind of looking for clues. So, yeah, I understand the retention pond, but the stormwater project, that doesn't really tell us what they're doing.
also, they do talk under their project goals and objectives at the beginning there. Their last sentence is, any financial relief we can provide people right now will help alleviate daily costs of living expenses. So is that just the overall of, I'm just trying to figure out the financial relief.
I think it's flood insurance. They talked
Is what
about
they're
the lower
thinking. Yeah,
there.
it's just unclear with that type of statement, what they're meaning by that. Lower cost flood insurance or mitigation efforts. So, okay. Any more questions here or move on to the next one? I think we have several questions on that one. I got some down. Yeah.
So where's their opinion going? Simple question.
Well, this one to me, I had two questions, no match question mark, and how much did Cambridge get?
In my spreadsheet is $118,622.
18,622.
In odd cents.
So the question is, what are you doing? Why are you not putting your 118,000 ARPA towards this?
I didn't even rank I didn't even do a scoring matrix on this one because those two questions just jumped out at me right off the bat. So
Of what did they use their funds on or?
that and why no match of any sort? I mean, not that. No, my question had to do with they aren't willing to put any of their funds toward it of any sort.
That's the question.
I think that's a fair question to ask. Our application doesn't ask.
Doesn't require it or
What else?
anything like
Yeah.
that, but
What else are you spending your ARPA funds on? But it's a fair question.
And we did get that question from, different applicants about whether or not there was things like that, but that sort of does go directly to the priority that the applicant faces.
Right.
Yeah.
absolutely. Uh-huh.
Question. That's 15, is that correct?
That's what I have on my list.
That's my next one.
Yeah.
And they said they were putting 302.5. There are some money to it and asking us for 302.5. And Leanne, is that the total that they got? Or you know?
Unless it says Story City is getting $490,000+.
490. It was probably early on in this process talking about this, but I thought I was told that First City was going to put all the rest of the money.
Well, we can't. I don't,
They may have, they may have some other things like, if they have any revenue loss, that they're putting some of those dollars towards that.
Right.
Or,
and I mean, the question is on there, and so then that makes us wonder what it is, but I don't think anywhere along this line have we said you have to put all your money.
Right.
toward it.
right, right.
It does say that they allocated their ARPA funds to sanitary sewer main lining projects and toward water and sewer infrastructure. They had a resolution to allocate their ARPA funds.
And they may not have known what their funds were, so they couldn't put an amount in. I don't know. Because remember, the cities were way delayed from us.
Right.
But this is not a project that's already started. I didn't see where it was.
Says Story City has already expended millions of dollars on improving its aging water and sewer infrastructure system. It will be mandated to spend millions more in order to meet Clean Water Act and Safe Drinking Water Act. Prior to COVID-19 pandemic, the investment on improving an aging water and sewer infrastructure system is already substantial. Financing the hardship. So the question would be trying to figure out if it's a clear and distinct project or a continuation of the project that already I've been working on. That's. Is that better? I guess it's simply of the work you're asking us to help fund, has any of it been started?
And it doesn't sound like it has, but I still would like to know, but
Right.
one of their answers is the city will be contracting out the work to qualified contractors and performance types of construction improvement projects. That doesn't sound like they kind of what's in this project.
Right. Any other questions? No, right? On my list would be 18.
They're asking a million, but I found the total cost of the project.
It sounds like this one was already. Since mid-
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
It sounded like this one was already in development since mid-2020.
Expansion. Oh, expansion. First look.
Bids. 9/2021.
So they've got on their budget, they're requesting $1 million for the water treatment plant, but they got in kind of 11 million plus. That they're using,
They're gonna need to borrow money.
yeah, so they're using water revenue bond, general obligation bond, TIP, and ARPA funds, the city of Huxley's allocation. So
Yeah. So the purpose of asking for these funds is to lower the debt needs. They don't need us to borrow as much, hopefully. Is what I gathered from this.
How much was Huxley getting the end?
$601,459.
So this 600,000 listed in the budget could be their
That's their ARPA dollars.
ARPA dollars.
Because if you scroll down, it shows.
Oh, does
American Rescue Plan, 600,000 is 100% of city ARPA dollars.
Gotcha.
What page are you on?
It's
Very end.
numbered, of 11.
Hmm?
11.
Resources and use funds.
Scroll on this, it scrolls too fast. Any other questions? You have 20, the next one.
I had the same question on this one as I've had on other ones. They did indicate they got ARPA funds and, but I don't know how much they were. And they want 100% funding from us on this one, it looks like, or from these ARPA funds, it looks like. Those were my two major questions. This is
Slater.
Slater.
Slater, oh, 20, I'm sorry.
And for your information, Slater is $217,276.
Oh, wait, I'm sorry. I was looking at Zering when I asked all those questions. So, never mind what I just said.
And
Okay.
Slater has 200 in ARPA budgeted, don't they? There was 217.
Yes,
Is that
yes.
200, looks like 200.
This whole project, yeah, I put a note on here. This whole project looks like they're asking, or they're using $200 of ARP, 200,000 of ARPA Slater dollars. Some shell doll money and some bonded money to make this work. Sure. Well, I'm assuming that Slater serves both Slater, shell doll and Slater.
I think so, yeah.
So they're having, or they're getting
Money from the city of Sheldon.
money from the city of Sheldon to complete the project.
So you said Slater had 217,000. Thank you.
I mean, they actually did a pretty good job of breaking down where the money was coming from.
Right.
Yes, it was very helpful.
Yeah.
But my question on this one is then, is the work already done?
Yeah, you have asked that question of me quite a few times and I keep telling you I don't have a key. And what makes you think that?
Just meetings from the Story County Economic Development Group, and what they've been sharing, but then you look under, but they approved contracts in this past July, the council meeting. So they must be doing additional enhancements. But there was something I read in here that my question was, is it repaying debt that they've already taken out? I'll have to look and figure out where I saw that.
I'm looking at their project or program timeline milestones. And it looks like they have much of it done by December of 2022. So what was it that made you think? And I get it from what they were
Just listen to the past meetings.
from past meetings.
Contracts approved July 19th. 2021.
And they might, this might have been one that was delayed because of COVID. They just got onto.
Moving forward because of that, sure.
Could the work have started in August 2021, where they list contract to mobilize
Contractor
the site?
mobilized.
Look at the timeline.
I know, that's what I'm looking at. Well, based on their narrative, is they're saying January 1 is when those sewer rates
Start to go up.
start to go up or whatever.
Well, I think it's a legit question.
Right.
Did
So
you-
it's
did
just,
you-
so the timeline just refers to the sewer rates going up. It doesn't necessarily reflect where the project timeline is.
Equipment installed in 2022.
Right.
But it said that the contractor was mobilized to the site on
Yeah, I
August
wonder what that
21st.
means. What work has actually been done so far by the contractor?
Yeah, something had to start.
And
August
quite
21st.
frankly, if they're putting, if it's multiple sources of funds, which this looks like it is, then the fact that it might have started in August is really, they're using other funding sources to get it started, is
Right.
my thought.
They're gonna have lots of, yeah.
Any additional questions for Slater? The next one, 24 then?
And that was the one I asked the question of. did the city of Syrian get ARPA funds? And they want us to completely, they want a full 1.7 from the county of the project, everything.
So Xeron got $77,194.
Wow.
You're asking if they received any ARPA funds. I know it says on there the amount they were to receive that 77,000, but did they apply for them? I guess would be the question. And what was your other question?
My only, it was just a comment. That they're wanting 100% funding for the project.
Just noting that they're.
Just noting that they're seeking 100%. Which, I mean,
They marked that they did apply for and received the funds.
Well, I'll probably just go right past it. Again, we look on these forms.
Yes.
Yeah, I see that.
So Slater's borrowing money.
to match.
Slater's just asking after 500,000, they're borrowing 6.1 million. Syrian isn't borrowing anything.
Right.
Do we know how close cities are to their jet limit?
I mean, I'd have to do the research by going out and looking at the state of Iowa. The state of the treasurer's department. The state treasury has a list of all, well, we have to report annually what our debt is.
Is that too difficult to get? I would be interested
It
in
could be one of the questions that we ask them.
Yeah.
That could be one of the questions we ask them.
but if we can get the information. I think it would be more helpful to me, because we've got all these cities and towns. And it'd be nice to know, do they have borrowing capacity or not? I mean, if they don't, if they're up against it and have a leaky and worse water system, that might be, yeah, I think that would be helpful. I just think.
More for Xeron. The last one I have under A would be number 31. Right?
Yes. I had columns 27 down too, because they're kind of talking about both.
What else do you have that in there?
Oh, I guess because it was labeled new affordable housing subdivision. I didn't have it
Yeah, I
under.
have it under towns.
I have it under housing and water.
Why don't we leave it under housing?
Okay.
Just because it's how it's the project, how they label their project title. And I think I get too confused that.
So then we're at 31, which is Roland,
Yeah,
and I have been, you know, budget, I think I've been They had 70,000 in kind. Seventy, 10,000 cash, 7,500.
What was rolling for the amount?
186,875.
186,875.
And odd change.
These small cities, those not seem minimal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They don't stretch very far.
Now
They
we're
don't.
looking at wastewater, water.
Right.
Oh, I'm unclear if they're using any ARPA dollars to go towards this.
And I mean, they got an in-kind of 70,000, which may or may not be ARPA, some of the ARPA dollars. I don't know.
This, under the, are you accessing alternative funding sources? If yes, please list, they check yes, then put annual city budget.
So, yeah, they talk about the city of Roland currently allocates money in the annual budget for water capital improvements and stormwater. And so that 70,000, my interpretation of this was that that's what they budgeted, was 70,000 of the city funds to go toward it.
That was
And it's an annual deal where they're annually doing $70,000 worth of stuff, whereas this would just been, let them finish the project basically, or do the project and get it done.
So,
Is that how you guys read it?
Yeah, I mean, just the city's not approved, they'll scale it back significantly.
Right.
Whatever's in the annual budget.
Right. Yeah, because they would have to continue to proceed with the annual allocation in order to make this, get it done, whereas if they got the ARPA funds, they could just finish the project.
14 years.
Right, but I put down a question if they were putting any ARPA funds towards it. Now that 70,000 maybe what they're budgeting for it.
So the question is, what are you doing with your other money?
Right.
Yes, definitely. You know, the other thing I wish we could figure out, it would be nice if there was some state website that rated city water and wastewater treatment. We know how bad somebody, you know, how bad is Roland compared to Zurich? Who's really got, you know,
Greater need.
the greater need? And I don't know that DNR has anything there. Did you ask me if there's any, you know, not hugely technical, but just some kind of great cities like a 1 through 5 AGF, something like that, so we have some idea. I think that and the most closely are there.
Yeah.
Would be two good pieces of information to help with these, because they've all saying they all want to do the same thing. And how we.
Question for Tara.
Just keeping track of questions.
I've been writing down a bunch of questions.
I have notes. I'm writing them down, but so I can understand.
Right, well, I can type up mine and then just do it, to all of us, and say, hey, are these all the questions? Were there other ones to put in so that we can then make sure they're
Thank
going out to the right entity?
Yeah. Thank you.
I'm sure I'm missing some of the questions as well. Okay, so we're moving on. Next I had were broadband. That's the next topic I had. And that's what I did for B, if that sounds okay. And if I caught that right, the first one would be number 14.
Well, here's,
Yep.
I had number 3 as the first one, because I think it's a combination, number 3 is a combination, boys and girls. There's, for the Boys and Girls Club, there's $75,000 in this $500,000 request is broadband related.
Is that really broadband?
I don't know.
I was like,
I was wondering about
well, I think that, yeah, I mean, that's upgrading, upgrading their internal
Okay,
systems.
Okay,
I have
It's
under
listed
building,
out in the
Yeah,
budget.
yeah, I had under infrastructure.
building infrastructure, yeah.
all right.
I think they marked, I think they marked it though.
They did,
Yeah.
yeah, they did, they put it
Okay.
under.
I was like,
that
I think they
umbrella.
put it under broadband, but maybe it's more of a.
Can I agree 14 is first one?
Okay. Number 14.
Did not have any questions.
Compared to some of the other lessons, it seemed pretty low for what they were trying to do.
I think the other question I had, so are they listed in the area with the broadband that would be coming? That would it fall under that or no?
I don't, you mean like the OCOs?
Yes.
I don't think so. I don't think so, because it's not it's the city itself being the customer, it's not getting it to residential,
Okay.
not getting it to household. It's not like fiber to the door kind of thing, it's a city park installation. I don't think it could have applied under OCI.
Okay, that was my one question, is I wasn't sure that was ineligible or not. before.
I've not seen anything, I've looked at the Nova 6 and they have 7 up yet, but I didn't see anything quite like this.
Okay. They gave a nice, detailed budget. I don't know if they're putting any of their ARPA money towards this project or if it's going towards something else.
He said it was going towards, they've got half of it and it's going towards something else. I just read it in here.
Yeah, no, it's all right. 'Cause I know I read it. I could not remember as well.
I want to say it was going to water and sewer, but. Is it?
Well, Biller has received half of their ARPA funds total not expected from this fund. $30. They have been used towards updating residential water connections.
Okay.
And to answer your question, Melissa, my answer
2
to
years?
that would be, you know what? If there are ongoing costs, that's their problem, not ours.
I just noticed there were 2 years of cost budgeted
Mm-hmm.
and then
None, because.
Right, any other questions for that one? And it looks like we jumped down, if I'm correct here, to number 33.
I show that. When I first read this one, I went for 9 places.
These are the kind of numbers you're gonna see out in rural.
Really?
It's pricey.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. It's, I mean, because you're sometimes looking at, you got one house on a mile.
Right.
Right. But they have to run the whole.
Yep, you got it, yeah.
So, this whole broadband discussion and all these broadband things that are gonna happen and yada, yada, yada. There's no guarantee it's affordable once it gets there, right?
That's a question I have. I had that for ICS too. Is I looked up ICS this morning because I'm not familiar with them. I could not find their plans, their rates for their plans. And sometimes, usually with the telcos, you find that information. I didn't find it with them.
You didn't find out the Minerva?
No, so I would ask, I didn't check Minerva Valley's, but I bet it's on the, let's ask both of them. What would be an affordable plan,
Right.
like,
Well, they're getting the infrastructure.
yeah, but you still, what are they gonna charge per month once you get it?
No, I know, but I meant,
$25.99 for 100,
but
up
if
and down,
Minerva
are they gonna
Valley
charge
doesn't have to
200?
bear that cost. then-
Right.
Then hopefully they pass that on to the customers.
Right.
Is
Yeah.
what, you would hope. If they don't have that investment, then.
Mhm. I also don't know if they've applied for the North 7 funds.
That was my.
I checked the website this morning and it's probably because of Thanksgiving weekend because the Note 7 request for due November 22nd, but it still says it's open until November 22nd. The money is they're supposed to be making funding decisions on Note 7 by December 31st. So I would ask both Minerva Valley and ICS, did they apply for Note 7 funds, and if so, how much? I think Phillips did say in their application they were considering it, but ICS did not.
You said Nova 7.
Fund availability.
I just noticed they referenced Nova number 6. in their application.
For
They
state.
put
they
it
didn't
in
get it.
plan for Nova 6. And are applying for ARPA funding for the Hallsburg project. And why they're applying for Nova 7.
It says we may be applying for state federal funding to the Power Rural Iowa Broadband Grant Program Nova 7.
Okay,
It was
so
just
it's in there.
announced.
So I thought that
Page
was,
9.
okay. thank you.
They may, the question is,
And if they get Nova 7 money, we can't use our ARPA money to, this is federal.
Right.
So that's one reason to hold off. To hold off. If they apply. And yes, I had to find affordable as a question.
Yeah, those are Minerva Valley's rates.
What?
These are Minerva Valley's rates on the screen.
Oh. Yo.
yeah.
It's pretty expensive.
Well,
And if you want the download to 200,
200 is pretty high.
100 is what they're saying is adequate.
right?
Yeah.
And I'm in the 15 range, paying about that.
I would say they're just a little more than like Metronet. Ours is 100, and it's
They're similar to Rise
$85
broadband,
a
that all you can get is the essential.
I know.
So they're not, so the question might be, if you're getting money to, you know, are you gonna pass that on to your consumers? How would you? That would be a pretty tricky thing to do, unless you pass it on to everybody,
Right.
and then it becomes 15 cents less a month.
Right, right.
I don't think 95%. I didn't think the 95% expensive. Yeah, it's the 175. I was like, well, the 200, but
You don't need to.
you don't need 200.
Well, I mean,
If you're all at home and you're Zoom meeting and your online schooling and you have teenagers, 100 is.
Well, it also
Sufficient.
depends if you do graphic work. If
Yeah.
you work from home and you do graphic work, that can take
Then it can take
higher.
a lot uploading.
Yeah, that can take a lot, yeah.
To get up at 2 in the morning.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, next I have 36. I have 36 and 37.
They're different.
They're different,
But,
but
right, but
They didn't do a very good job of delineating.
I didn't either.
I don't know if I was just
I thought there were duplicates for a while, and then I saw that one
different
is
locations.
in Beta,
One's in Nevada.
that's the other plan.
And the other one's
In
Meadow.
Ames.
Anna Lane and Four Seasons and Ames. And you can see if you got a mobile home park, so you got people real close together, you can do it a lot cheaper than you can out in your own Tosford.
Right.
That's exactly what that is. My question is, has the city of Ames done anything similar to what we've done?
No.
They're keeping all their ARPA money, they're not,
At this point.
at this point, they haven't done.
so these are all in the city of Ames, but they can't go to Ames because Ames isn't doing the same thing we are.
My question on both of them was, can the top projects be completed by 2026? I don't think they did not answer on either of them. This is the note I made to myself.
And what their plans, what affordable is for them. So,
Well, I got the impression that getting it will be once for these locations.
That's kind of my question with any of these sub-allocations. They may say that they can complete it by then and they may have good intentions, but if there's a project delay, then what?
Then what? I mean, I had to give ICS credit. I don't know where they're getting their money, but they are putting 30% towards. You know, they're only asking for 70% of the project.
Are they saying that they would run fiber from Ames to Nevada?
They have
Proposed
fiber
now?
Okay.
But they're trying to get the rural area between Ames and Nevada, because they know Metronet's been going through Nevada.
There's a proposed fiber map as one of the.
Right,
Files.
yeah, I was looking at that, but
Down 36.
they used to own 36.
36, oh, I'm sorry.
We kind of
Yes,
jumped back and forth with
36, yes.
37, I just want to make sure, so folks
Yes.
that are listening also know which one we were.
I didn't realize that you were talking to me. I don't know why, but.
No, it's our- they've got to connect it to something.
It says fiber from Ames.
Yeah, fiber, proposed fiber map.
Right.
They misspoke the data.
Yeah.
This
Where's
is
the
our goal is,
application?
our goal is to provide fair market price internet access to the homes in Heatherglen, Mobile Home Park, and Country Estates with pre-installed fiber optic connections, so access is quick and easily accessible.
For Minerva Valley, it was a percent, we said, right?
Minerva put it 50%.
Yeah. They're 275 and they're asking us for 137, so they also, that's the one credit as well. 259 homes. Everyone in country club.
Right.
So the question of, do they apply from no to 7?
Yeah.
So.
Hertz Farm Management is also included.
Say what?
Hertz Farm Management, investors include Hertz Farm Management.
A question I would have, and maybe they aren't, because I don't have the, I had the map pulled up and I have it down, so I'm not looking at the map right away, is, has Metronet already targeted this area or gone out to this
I
area?
don't know if Metronet has, I don't know if Club Hotel has, because they've gone some areas around
Is
the.
Metro that been mainly? They're not in the rural.
Right, well, right, but I know they're like in Nevada, so that's what I'm just saying, is they may, I don't know where, I don't know how far they are looking at going. If they're,
And,
if they're
you
going out,
know, there's no way,
right,
yeah, there's no way we say, no, that's somebody's territory or somebody else.
right,
It's
right,
all
right,
those- They kind of have their territories staked out. And,
right.
but I have no idea how ICS and Metro.
So what were you asking, on this, I think we're probably asking for both of them, but at least for number 6. Yes, did you apply for NOFA 7 funds?
She has both of them.
Both of them, but were you looking at? Did you, I thought you said something. That, would it go to Minerva Valley? Is that what you're asking me to apply for those funds?
I'm asking, I would ask both of them if they apply for NOFA 7.
Okay, so both the applicant and,
Yes,
okay, okay.
I would ask Minerva Valley as applicant, and I would ask ICS for both of their applications to apply.
I know we were kind of going back and forth between 36 and 37. Are there additional questions on 36? And then look at 37, just to make sure. We're going to just help me with my notes. So looking at 37.
It's in the city of Ames and nobody's claimed it.
And it's literally right down the street from me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So timing. So if they get money approved, it says the design would be what, 3 to 9 months to install. And then all residential homes in the area, oh, they can be connected within 15 months start of project.
I guess my question on, one of my questions on this one would be if they have approached the city of Ames. to help with this project.
Through other funding, not our funding.
Any funding. We had a conversation with the city of Ames.
I was looking at their website and saw that they had partnered with Hunsaker Property Management. I think that's the name of the rental part of Hunsaker. For the mobile home park over by Iowa State, right there. It's
The city.
the, no,
No.
ICS.
Oh, ICS.
I think that'd be something to know as well. Are they with a private developer or property management to share the cost?
So who manages? Online courses?
I know. You put down one of the questions for them. Neither projects indicated they could be completed by 2026.
And they marked, they could be under contract by 24, but they didn't mark. anything.
They didn't mark whether they could be completed by 26.
Seems a long way out, but not for projects like this.
Correct. Just look at Metro Net here in the video. This property's all owned by one party, so that'll be less.
Lane. Looks like it's Blumenfeld.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, the easements and getting the property, getting okays on the property shouldn't be.
Well, the value of the property will increase exponentially if there's fiber run out to all of this. So it's a conversation worth having with the.
Not only will the value increase, but probably so will the lot rate.
Yes, exactly.
So has park owner been approached about sharing costs? Question.
Well, I think the Blumenfeld was one. I don't know.
Any additional questions? I need a couple minutes break. I don't know if the rest of you. Yeah,
I'm not opposed.
yeah, and we've been sitting here for over 2 hours or whatever, right? Sounds good. Feeling like I just need a few minutes break and then reconvene and,
And we're gonna be together tomorrow, so we get,
right, well, we could come back and reconvene going more or less today. I'm just saying, we want like a 5-minute break. Just, yeah,
Yes.
just so folks know we're just gonna take a 5-minute break. Okay, we're gonna continue on. From there, we're gonna start with number 12. The Good Neighbor Emergency Assistance. We're looking at housing next and well, this does look kind of a little bit like case management. It also talks about preventing homelessness, so we wanted to put it under this particular area, so.
let's talk about working with tenants and
Right,
landlords.
over there, right. Right.
Resolution.
So Alyssa, we're starting with number 12.
Sorry, my-
No, we just got that.
There was a line in the.
Well, I was trying to do 20 things in 5 minutes, so you know how that works. Okay.
Budget.
Oh, I had questions. Did you? I did.
And share with us what those questions are.
Just. So this position, is it a lot different than what we do with community services with our position? I'm clear of,
I had that
I
question
think
also, yeah.
it looks like the same,
Similar.
similar, but I think it's similar but different.
Okay.
That
I
was just
think-
my question. I thought, well, okay.
See, this is where I was saying there are several things that kind of feel like.
Since management.
So the need is out there, that was clear, because it popped up in multiple places.
Yeah, right. But I just didn't know how much overlap this would be with what,
Yeah,
because aren't they part of our,
aren't they part of the coordinated
I
intake
thought-
process?
I thought so.
So there's a difference between intake and case management.
Right, but we hired a housing,
We have the intake that helps them get the services, right?
Yeah, they start with community services, go for centralized intake
Yep.
there. And then they coordinate.
They connect them to.
Connect
Yes,
them.
so they don't
Partner
do the
agencies.
actual case management. So this would be a
They'll
case
be doing
management.
some of that, but with the service coordinator
Yeah.
position, they will be
Yep.
doing some of that. I think Good Neighbors situation is, right now, it's one person,
Okay,
and they could probably do a lot more, but they got one person.
yeah.
I think it just keeps coming down to that.
So does it make sense organizationally to have different case management done by different agencies or to try to have it in one place? Because then if there's a couple things, with kind of spreading it around, and, oh, you can go here, you can go here, you can go here to get this. It's inefficient and it also causes confusion with the consumer.
I think I don't disagree on that. I think probably the one thing that comes down to is, well, through community services, they do the coordinate intake and maybe do some case management or help connect and maybe some follow-up. I'm assuming that it's probably this other entity that's doing more in depth with them. I mean, I'm not,
And that's what, when you look at the
that's why it's a
actual
little
position,
unclear with all of them that are out there.
yeah. How do
How
they,
they all work together.
like, would our intake refer somebody to a Good
Yes.
Neighbor?
Yes.
Yes.
And then Good Neighbor would take it from there?
Yes,
Is
and
that-
it's my understanding this position then has those conversations with the landlord
Okay.
and tries to,
gotcha.
Do-
So,
do-
So
have
our
those
position is
conversations.
more letting them know what resources are out there and get them connected to them, not necessarily
Right.
securing the funding or the assistance.
Right
Right,
now-
and then helping them, if there are other applications they could be completing for assistance in other areas. Or like with the IFA funding for all that, the confusion that was going on with the IFA funding. I think part of that, part of the reason this even came up was people couldn't figure out how to do the paperwork, couldn't figure out all the hoops they needed to jump through. So conversations were happening. There need to be people who are helping people actually figure out how to access the services and funding that might be available.
I think navigators may be a more descriptive word. It's just exactly what you're talking about, but it's similar to case management.
Yes, it is, but I don't know that community services is doing.
I think they want to do some of that eventually, but right now, I don't think they have the capacity. They're just trying to keep up in Fort County.
Wasn't that part of it though with the position we
Yeah.
approved?
They wanted
Yes.
They
to
were gonna do case
Yes.
management.
Yes, and that's part of the job description for them to do some of that. But in Fort County this size, is that going to be enough? And I don't know that it is. For Rowan County this size, the question is, are you still gonna have that problem that once that second person gets in place, will they be almost immediately overloaded as well?
Or the other question is, you get that person and he has somebody over at Good Neighbor doing the same thing, how do they keep from tripping over each other? How do they communicate? How much time has to be spent in communication so they don't? Oh, you're working with Joe, I'm working with Joe too, what's Joe telling you? So Joe is trying to work both ends, or something like that. I don't know.
And was
And
this,
then where does the bridge home come in this? Are they
And was-
doing anything?
I know each entity kind of had a request, but none of them had the funding for it, is why the county kind of pulled things together. I mean, that was my understanding, Carla explained it, but I know there's different things that they do that we don't offer, so I don't.
Right,
I
I
don't-
look at all the,
right.
look at all the things that the navigator position would assist in. Yeah,
Some of it we,
using online dispute resolution for tenants, applying for CARES funds through IFA, clear up matters with the IRS. I mean,
So Sandra, maybe you could chat with Carla and talk to her about this application and say, did you imagine our case manager was going to be doing this? How do you think it would work to have a navigator in another, this function somewhere else? Is that going to help? Or is that going to get kind of confusing?
Yeah,
yes, definitely, and look at it, it might be something that we ask Carla to zoom into a meeting, because we may have additional questions, and I think that, yeah.
Is the whole $104,000 just one position?
It's 2 years, I think.
Is it?
That's what yeah, it was 2 years.
2.5 would be 148,000.
And I think
No, no,
what,
it says the request of 104,000 fund navigator position, for rescue funds for 3 years, 3 years.
3 years, and then they're trying to use the data
So they're using
from
like a
that to get a judicial grant.
well, they've got the judicial grant.
Oh, okay.
That's how Good Neighbor even got involved in this in the first place, was they were participating in some of those conversations.
Yes, yes.
And had expressed interest in doing that work. But the funding from the judicial branch was only going to go so far.
When it says it doesn't start. But as of yet, judicial grants will be written to fund this position permanently beyond
So that's,
24.
but if you say, it says the judicial branch
Will
was
be written.
funding from the Iowa State in the amount of 23.5 from the Iowa
For
State
startup.
Justice Institute in the amount of 23.5 to help with the startup. And then we would like to make it permanent, hoping that the there will be a
So there must be funding available starting in like July of 24.
Well,
Is
I
that
don't know. I
because it
think
just says 2.5 years of funding will demonstrate the need for the permanent advocacy and educational services. Grants will be written and submitted beginning in July of 22.
I took it as they're wanting to pilot this.
Yeah, but then they have funding later on.
23,005, they've asked for 15,000 from asset, but they're saying that, to me, I took it as that's not enough, that will get you maybe a year or whatever.
Judicial branch just give them 23.5.
Yeah,
Right, right. And they
First
put the
6
request,
months.
it says request 15,000 to fund navigator position from asset. Then they're also asking through these funds for 3 years. So I think they're wanting to get a good sense of data
in
over
order to
a
get
few
the
years.
grants.
Is this? And if so, then we're going to apply for other funds for 2024 and beyond. That's how I took it. But by their budget, if they receive the asset funds in that 23,000, I'm not sure is that enough that covers them for one year.
it almost looks like the judicial funds cover it for 6 months, the first 6 months.
6 months.
I don't know what their
Yeah,
budget looks like. And a good neighbor must have put in 2,000 to cover. Targeted donation.
yeah, and their good neighbor looks like also they're doing in-kind dollars for space training,
Yeah.
for example.
I saw it similar to the way you saw it, it says that they're trying to use this as.
Pilot
information
program.
to support permanent.
Yeah, right.
My main question is just how does it work with the services provided for some information? Just have to coordinate well or not. When's the Office of State Court Administrator getting involved funding homeless?
There was grant funding available. There was interest in the judicial branch for helping people. This is my recollection. I zoomed in on one meeting. So there was funding to support some sort of navigator to help people avoid evictions. And so originally they were thinking about talking to Iowa Legal Aid, but then there was concerns that legal aid, that relationships between legal aid and landlords isn't always positive, and that landlords may not be willing to participate because they might feel like things are stacked against them. So they were looking for a more neutral partner to take on this project. So I think that's how, it's my understanding that's how Good Neighbor even got involved in developing this idea at all.
Yeah, it's a strange, it's not something I'm used to seeing the courts do.
Well, keeping people out of court was,
Yeah.
was the goal. It was like
goal.
keeping those cases from even going to court, I think.
Interesting.
I don't think the funding originally was from the judicial branch. I just can't remember which.
Kind of landed there.
Yeah,
I got it. That's
it's like
that's-
the social, yeah, like the Health and Justice Agency or something. I think I need to stop talking because I can't remember exactly. I'll have to look it up and let you know. Or that could be one of the questions.
No, I'm just curious more than.
Any other questions on number 12? not, I have number 13.
How many staff members? do you see that in place? Maybe it's only one, it's 346 for 5 years.
I put a note to myself on this one that the total rental portion, the rental assistance, the food, the housing supplies, the utility, the furniture was $821,400. So there was 400 and some $1,000 worth of admin / salary related in this request.
Second tax category. The admin expense is almost as high as the staff salary.
Right.
Because they're looking at what, 261 over 261,000 over 5, yeah, over 5 years.
You what?
They're using 15% as their admin cost for
Yeah, I see
staff
that.
offices.
Says the program will last 5 years, but prior to that time frame, we will look to secure federal funds. to Support our rapid rehousing program.
But they've already been doing some rapid rehousing. So I guess my one question would be, have they?
I read it.
I would wonder if they're already applying for federal funds,
Oh.
if they have, if they've been doing it, that would just be one of my questions.
Will be created our agency's first rapid rehousing program in 2017. YSS now operated rapid rehousing units. Supporting homeless youth across the state. So it's an expansion program. There are strong
Yes.
outcomes for our other rapid rehousing programs. I want to provide this service to more Story County youth who were negatively affected by the pandemic.
Right.
So it's, yeah.
Linda, your question, it says we're gonna hire and train 1 FTE, but I wonder if that's in addition to what they currently have.
I assume that they're,
That staff related.
they're looking for more staff for a program that's already going.
I don't think 1 staff
So the question is, how many staff are
Built into
dedicated to
that.
this program and how many are you wanting to add an additional staff?
It just says hire and train one FTE.
Right,
But I would imagine there's other staff already there that are.
right. So that's what I'm
Right,
saying.
yeah, I
I'm
don't know
wondering
how
is
many
how,
this would-
how many staff are already dedicated?
Instruction.
Get some asset money for transitional housing services. Not on this scale.
They talked about their Department of Justice rehousing grant and HHS outreach grant, so they won't be using those. Just how does that work? But because those are both federal, correct?
Right, right.
The other one is, are they using justice grant dollars now?
Federal dollars.
It kind of sounds like they wouldn't, but that they would try to secure it once the ARPA funding's done. I mean, that's how it's kind of written, or that's how I took it.
People can apply for a federal grant. Yeah, they're asking us for money for 5 years. Somewhere in there, they're gonna apply for a federal grant.
But then they said that they have a very strong track record,
Right.
and they have secured these things in the past 2 years, so are they
So-
not gonna get those moving forward, or are they waiting for the ARPA fundings?
Yeah, because then I guess my question would be if they're applying, they would apply for those funds in the meantime. If this is something they'd be awarded, then you'd have to really watch that, because you'd have to pull back the ARPA on the ARPA dollars to not.
Yep.
To not have that in there. But yeah, so would they wait? Yeah, a couple years, well, and they're also asking for, what is it, for 5 years, and
They're asking for 5, but they said they apply.
right, so I'm just thinking 2026. You're thinking of awards in 2022, because we're almost to the end of 2021, that's 4 years. So you have to take that into account, because you need this all expended in that time frame. And I'm gonna assume somewhere in there, they're gonna be, if they want to continue this project, they're gonna be applying for those federal dollars. Just where does that, where
Right,
does that
so-
fall in there?
I mean, are they saying the funding is for this one person and the work this one person does and the support of that one person
For 5 years.
within a program that already exists? Is that what they're saying?
Right, that's the question, but I'm also saying, they're saying for 5 years, but we have to have these dollars expended, which would be in 4 years, right?
Well, they've got.
Well, December of
2026.
26.
I guess it'd be by 5, yeah,
They're-
I guess, yeah,
They're saying January, so 4.5.
yeah.
But I think the other question might be, how many youth have you in the last year rehoused, administrative rehoused in Western Story County? And how many more would you be, what's your baseline? And how many more would you be serving with this position?
That served 10 homeless youth
Right,
each calendar
10?
year.
Oh, my gosh.
That's
Yeah.
the-
and then it said what they
Milestone.
want to do was that their goal is 50.
So 10 a year, 5 years. How many are they serving now? Still, yeah.
I don't think that's listed.
Right, so I put that down.
Okay.
Is it worth asking them if they currently have any federal funds going to this? program?
Yeah.
Currently, not what their plan is. Are they currently using any federal dollars?
Any other questions for this one? Yep, 22.
Yeah. Patient. What are they? They said they have raised more money and being successful in doing that. But then they said they're gonna have, if they didn't get this money, they'd have to decrease shelter beds next year. So not, without getting into their budget to, really into detail, I just didn't understand that. And those statements were really close together in there somewhere. So I guess I was trying to figure out if they were hiring new staff or shifting the funding source.
I didn't read that it was all about staffing. I read it was all, that there was a lot.
Financial assistance.
Yeah.
When you
Right.
get with the,
I mean, yeah, there's some assistance with funding staff, but I didn't see it as a position. I saw it as we'll allocate dollars for this, and this in FY 22, this, and this in FY 23. And the it's just a,
if the house on-call advocate wages, that's not a lot. Housing staff salary and benefits. And administrative staff salary and benefits, more within their cash match. And then the ARPA request, but
I think the question for me came when they said we'd have to reduce
yeah,
shelter beds if we don't receive this funding.
why? That
That was
sounds,
just kind of a, yeah, that's essentially stood out as a why.
yeah, that's why I said it's, are they shifting the funding source or is something they're already doing as well?
Well, and when they say they'll have to reduce shelter beds, are they, does that mean we won't rent additional apartments? Or we won't rent additional hotel rooms, not necessarily, because they don't have a shelter anymore, do they?
I thought they did not, I thought they were more of a scattered site.
Yeah.
We provide funding through asset for shelter.
But is it for scattered sites or is it for one specific location?
It's on their location on there.
No, yeah, they don't, there's no, yeah, that's offices.
Yeah, that I do, yeah, that is. how-
I kind of took it as though they're expending a lot more now than ever. Like their funding, their CARES Act funding has run out and that they're still spending what they could spend. Is that how you read it?
They're still having,
Those expenses and they don't have funding.
right,
Right, and the violence against women funding has almost completely dried up. And so their federal funding is not existent anymore.
The question was about committing funds by the end of 2024. How those how that hotel fund would be committed.
how would you, right?
So how committing funds by,
2024, because they mentioned hotel costs and so forth in 2025 and 2026.
Right.
How would that work?
I don't know if they have contracts with
Hotels.
and they pay what do they have.
Hotels? I'm not sure about that. Which was their original mistake. Hotels, but
Well, this one just kind of totally mixed me up because it talks about crime victim housing, but really I think the whole application is just about housing in general.
Well, yeah, yes, but their clients are survivors of domestic abuse
Okay.
and sexual assault.
Okay,
I guess my question is too, and Lisa, this might be for you to kind of recall, is, well, all of you, I guess. About having funds committed by 2024, we need to have the funds committed. by
we
20
need to,
By
yes,
2024
yes, and spent by
and
2026.
2026.
So
I
that
don't
question
think
is
they,
probably off the table.
yeah, so I don't think they would have to have it
Right.
obligated.
I thought because it was a sub-allocation that, yes, our responsibility to commit it by 2024. And they had to also.
No,
And no, I don't believe so.
that's not how I read it at all.
Right, and that could be a question that I can double check, but that my understanding is we have to have it obligated.
We had to have it obligated.
And
by
that's where you have your contracts or whatever
with these in place.
with these.
We'll
in place so
probably
that
do
they're-
it multi-year contracts.
Right.
And obligated, we'll have to have the contracts in by 2024, but we'll have to include 25 and 26. 2 years obligated.
Yeah.
You have, like, have.
Right.
Um,
Any additional questions for this one?
It's still. I would just want to make sure that we know that the staff money was going to hiring additional staff.
Right.
Rather than just shifting.
Got that down. I have for the next one, if I'm right, is 27.
Number what?
27 total.
Micah wasn't a housing,
Yeah, Micah,
Which number is Mike?
23?
see, that's another one of those. I
That's
have
a
it as
Navigator
food
pilot
and
project.
Navigator,
I had it under economic relief for economic impacts.
let's look at it.
Are we on 23?
Well, I had it under housing, but I don't know what, it's another Navigator project. is
Right.
what I
Well,
was-
since we did the other one under Navigator, let's look at it here. At the same.
Oh, mention, and ask that about what federal funding they're getting.
Oh, yeah, for the last one.
Yeah.
So out of full disclosure, this is a board that I do serve on. So this will probably be something more, there's decisions for you guys to review. When Micah, their board always approves applications for grants. I abstain from voting on it. So I've not even seen it. This is my first even seeing it through breaking subcommittee groups and the other subcommittee reviews and stuff.
I don't really understand this one very. I don't really, I'm working really hard to try and really understand what this position.
It's another case. It's, I don't see it, I think it's just another employee doing the same things they're already doing, which aren't bad things. And yes, probably there's more need because of the economic impacts of the pandemic, but I don't see it particularly responding to the pandemic.
And unless I read it wrong, it was like 167,575 just on the salary benefits.
So one question is this to add staff for a current program or project that you're doing?
It is. Michael will seek to hire a full-time program
Right.
navigator position.
And it's a pilot, Mike anticipates the navigator will be a successful pilot project and would seek additional support through ARPA, beyond ARPA, to maintain continuity.
Creating a central point of contact to implement a service model that matches families with multiple programs. I don't see it as really housing. That's okay. For navigator, but I think navigators of
Also, they do also reference this, the CSBG Community Services Block Grant.
okay, so this is here's really the best description, I think. Here's one. Our first project objectives to hire a program generalist to act as a primary point of contact, working to implement systematic revisions to our service model to connect families to multiple available services. Our second project objective is to increase support for essential workers at our two-story county offices to complete the link between the navigator and quality service provision. That's pretty general.
Yes, it is.
And I don't see.
So are they talking about hiring a person and then supplementing their current wages, the wages?
I'm not sure, so. One question I just wrote down, is this to add staff for a current program? Or is this to hire new staff?
That's, it's got a 2% cost of living increase for essential workers survey. This project activity will include 2% cost of living increase. It will reduce turnover, maintain experienced staff. So there's some current staff increases included in the project, 2% increases. is what I remember. reading. I'm trying to find
2%,
it.
yeah,
Yeah,
because
so
it's a, yeah.
different times of the year.
That almost sounds like trying to incentivize
Yeah.
the current staff.
Continuity services to families.
And to
recognize them for their service delivery during COVID.
Huh?
And to recognize staff for service delivery during COVID. Page 10.
The project budget. They're showing all of their, do they have 25.71 FTEs?
If you're asking me that, I'd have to find out. I mean,
That seemed like a
they
reasonable
do
number.
have quite a few FTEs or whatever.
Equivalent, yeah, I don't know if they're all.
Right,
So are they trying to do the premium pay, which that was not open during this round? Is that?
And that may be-
The essential workers, like
Where did you see that again?
page 10. On the budget portion. Where it was the essential workers.
the premium pay or kind of staff retention.
Retention pay is kind of how I look at it instead of. To reduce turnover. They do say they receive federal, state, local, and other grants, but I don't know.
But then they receive federal funds for this project. Agency may receive federal funds for
Something
like,
else.
Head Start program,
Right.
like this is a Head Start.
Right.
It's all, state or local funded, very different.
Right.
Okay, so. That's what that is then. That 25.71 FTE essential workers. ARPA funds request of $40,000 on top of $2 million would be 2%. Got it. So the 40, the 13, and the 10 is all the cost of living increases. About $64,000 cost of living. Yeah, about
Any other questions for this one, or we'll go on to 27?
I still don't feel like I'm clear on what their navigator is going to be navigating. It looks more like just gathering information. Is that kind of what? It feels like to me, it's they're doing internal, doing internal assessments and that's how I read it, but I don't.
Versus more direct.
Yeah,
that they're looking at their system.
yeah, yes.
And was that whole 167 plus one to that position? That was.
The top part of the. Yes, yes, but it was multiple years, yes. Was it 2?
I just put down my,
Okay.
any more questions with number 23? If not, the next one would be the new affordable housing division, colo number 27.
I kind of feel like this is very similar to Nevada's request. Doing the water, the necessary water upgrades for,
Yeah, it
Affordable.
falls under housing, but it really is a lot of infrastructure
right,
for that.
yeah.
Yeah, for housing, that's, yeah.
They're limited, they cannot. The only way they can develop at this point in time. that makes sense too. So, not sure what that's-
So they say that lots can be listed for sale no later than January 2023.
And this request is for the getting it ready for sale. It's
Right.
not to finish all the
Right,
rest of
right,
it. It's to,
And they are using their ARPA funds.
they are.
Yep,
Plus
yep, I did see
cash.
that, yep.
$126,000, is that all there are?
Pretty close. So where do you see 126?
It did say it in their application.
Okay.
I'm having a spreadsheet that they are being. States.
On page 11, right map, city will use their American Rescue. It's about 126,000. Total development will pay additional funding needed from the board.
State site, it shows they are getting 122.
Maybe they estimated it at 126.
Well, they said about 126. Any questions? Put it all on there. 28.
I know that this one had structure.
Yeah,
I'm not clear about whether or not those are.
It's a pretty general budget. Shelter renovation, $1 million, recovered house, $1 million.
Yeah, it's not real specific, is it?
No,
They're renovating 2 of their current buildings.
for $1 million.
And how big the buildings are.
I don't know what they are. Yeah, one of them. I don't see
It
that
says
at all.
2 YSS building to transform the spaces to supported housing. So I mean,
Problems?
I think
But
what
here's
they're,
the
I
thing,
think
they
what
go-
they're trying to do, if I'm recalling, is, they're
I know.
planning to build the behavioral health, is they want to turn their current transitional or their current shelter into transitional for those kids that aren't ready to just go home. They still need
some level of support, but also kind of that level of independence as well there, you know. So it's that bridge, that transition in there, that is, I believe, what they're trying to.
That's what I'm saying, that they're trying to repurpose existing.
Right,
housing.
right, that's how I've read this, yeah.
It's their youth recovery house and an AIDS shelter. So would that be a Rosedale?
Rosedale shelter, I think.
That would be the AIDS shelter they're referring to. I'm guessing so.
And Rosedale has had a lot of work done to it over several years.
Right.
It's got a big addition. I cannot buy that.
Well, they said 500,000.
It's got 500,000 to 2 million. The range is pretty, it's a $1.5 million range of costs.
Right. In the request.
The
What
original-
are you saying, Lisa?
I'm saying the requested funds were 500,000 to 2 million. It was a swag, a complete and entire swag. Is my thought.
And these buildings have been used for supportive housing. The one-time capital request transfer the buildings into supportive housing.
They want to do
Buildings have
long-term
been used
recovery.
for supportive housing. I need, I don't know.
Because it's construction piece.
The construction piece, yeah. I know, I'm reading this answer that Lisa got, which is very,
Yeah, and,
Ambiguous.
you know, I will have to read on the.
On the new one?
The new one, because I thought, when I was reading through, I read something. I thought I saw something, and it was still a little vague, but it was a little clearer. That I thought, okay, this is gonna be another question I have to. It's for number 28, but I don't know which, it is the new frequently asked questions that came out as of November 15th. 2021. So last one we had was February.
well, and your
I think
specific
what's it, our
question
new-
about, your specific question about capital improvements,
Yes. That I
infrastructure on,
asked NACO.
because it talks about affordable housing to be built in order to increase the supply of affordable and high quality living units in concentrated areas with inadequate or poor quality housing. And you have to go look at actual block numbers. I mean, the whole building building separately is going to be a problem, I think.
Yeah,
I don't think it's gonna be clear.
and I did a follow-up question to NACO that I have not heard back. They gave their response back. It was like, okay, well, your response got to part of my question, but not not the real crux of my question. So, and I have not heard back from them. And again, they have last 1,600 questions. Now, we have our next meeting December 8th. You know, hopefully we can have a little bit more.
And they have a line in that same response about if building new facilities does become clarified as an allowable use, well, that implies that it's not.
Right,
Well,
right.
Right.
But like, what do they mean by new? Would they new or not? Right?
Well, that's what I was thinking, that they're talking about completely. new,
Well,
but
right, and there
new
is
construction
there
period.
is something in here that does talk about, and I should have highlighted, because I was reading it over lunch, again, is that, is that if you're doing something, you know, brand new, harder to tie it direct, I mean, it was trying to figure out how do you tie it directly to COVID.
COVID. Mhm.
Was the question on it. I'll find it, and then I'll let you guys know what number it is.
I don't know what my questions are about this.
You
All
don't?
right,
Well, I do, but I don't ask. I don't, I mean, the question is, I don't understand. I thought what's the extent of renovation? Why does this renovation have to be so extensive to use it as what we used to, I mean, in the vernacular was a halfway house?
I think they want to use it for longer term.
they
They've
do.
already had these kids in treatment.
Okay,
But
yeah.
I think what they're trying to do is make them, because I think right now it is more, you know, kind of group living at your own rooms, but I think what they're I think, I'm not sure, what they're trying to do is make them a little bit more individualized.
Okay.
Individualized, but they can still have some support, I think. I don't want to speak for Andrew on it. That was kind of when he came to CICS and talked about, the question was asked if he was going to get rid of the buildings. He said, no, our vision is to do something more. I'd have to look back at that or look back to that tape, or we'll have to follow up and ask him, because I just, that wasn't something, a focus of CICS at the time. It was the behavioral health was our.
Uh-huh.
No, it is.
Pardon me?
Maybe the question is, what's currently the housing capacity of these two buildings, and what would be the increase for 2 million? What would $2 million get us that isn't already there? Maybe said a little differently, but you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
These buildings already have been housing kids. What is the current capacity? And how would it increase?
more questions by yourself? Okay, on to number 29. Finding hope and sun.
Construction, like, yeah, all
Yeah.
capital
Yeah,
construction. Just one.
yeah, and that's where it gets a little unclear, because they do talk about using funds directly to address homelessness. But then when they talk about brand new infrastructure, it's unclear.
But is it unclear if you're in a qualified census tract?
No, I think if you're in a qualified census tract, then it is clearer.
I think so too.
Yes.
That if the property
Yes.
Right.
is in there.
Yes,
It's in a qualified census tract?
yes. According to
According to
the
the
map they
census.
gave us, yes.
Right.
I put, let me see.
It's not the only one, is it, I thought the only qualified census tract we had was in West Thames.
I think the census data changed that a little bit.
Oh, we looked at it a few months ago.
I think, but I also have not gone, I haven't done any
No,
research to
I know.
verify.
Leanne, I'm gonna throw you under the bus here. You told me you could pull that up easily. But according to the map that they provided, these properties are in the qualified tract.
Do you have any idea what page of the application that was?
The application,
What do you want?
try to, I was gonna say, it's about, I would say in the middle.
On page 22.
Thank you.
Yes.
I don't have that, mine aren't page numbered in front of me.
Well, oh yeah, it's just because I'm on the
Yeah.
computer.
Exhibit C?
Yes.
Look at accounting, or just choose accounting. Let's see if we find. Yeah. No, you're gonna have,
So,
it's gonna have to,
so where are they planning?
So
Is this where they are now or where they're planning to build?
Well, they're planning to build in that same section where they are already. So Sherman and Second, you know,
Yeah, no, they are.
that's where.
So this purple swath is the qualified census tract.
So, yes.
2022 qualified census tract. Okay. Okay. Grocery store.
But aren't you're wanting to look at 2022? Right? Yeah, not 2021.
So if you go to page 26, it has it all marked out, the properties that. we're looking at.
Is it that exhibit C
G.
that you're looking at? Oh, exhibit G.
Exhibit C is the qualified census tract map.
Mhm.
So under the, and I don't know if November 15th is any different, but under the July 19th frequently asked questions, how does it, the interim final rule address the disparate impact on certain population, talks about the qualified census tracts. And it says, building stronger neighborhoods and communities, including supportive housing and other services for individuals experiencing homelessness, development of affordable housing. So is that building?
What number is that?
It's page 7 on July.
No, I know, but like, is it listed like 3.4 or 2.7?
2.11.
If I can see if there's something comparable here. Is it, how does, what is,
So
what was
where
your title?
is-
What was your title again, Lisa?
How does the interim final rule help address disparate impact of COVID-19 on certain populations and geographies?
Okay, yep, I got the same, one here.
I think when I read development of affordable housing, that I hear building. Right.
As long as it's in a census tract and all.
Well, and it says recipients may also provide these services to other populations, households, or geographic areas disproportionately impacted by the pandemic. In identifying disproportionately impacted communities, recipients should be able to support their determination for how the pandemic disproportionately impacted the populations, households, or geographic areas served. So even if they weren't in a qualified census tract, the argument could still be made that it would be an acceptable use. We would just have to make sure that we could defend that, like strongly defend it. The fact that we may be looking at an area that's within a qualified census tract means we don't have to work so hard to prove that this was needed in that area.
Right.
Yes, but it has to be in that area. Is how I read it. Like if it's not in a qualified census tract, it's not eligible to be built.
No, that's not how I read that at all. If it's
Okay.
not in a qualified census tract, you can still do it. You just better be darn ready to defend it and show that it's an eligible use.
The bar just gets great. It's
Yeah.
easier to defend if it's in a qualified census tract.
Yes, because there's just an assumption that anyone living in that area has been disproportionately impacted.
Because you read the second sentence and I didn't. Thank you
Oh.
very much.
Well, I mean,
No, you're
I've
right.
read all of
I
these.
agree.
so
I agree.
Too many times,
Mhm.
but,
Right. This application, this request is actually all in that area.
Yes.
from what I can
Right,
tell.
right. So there are, for the most recent, has it separated out in 2 paragraphs. So it talks about the recognition of disproportionate impacts. Treasury would presume that certain types of services are eligible uses when provided in a qualified census tract, families living in QCTs, or when these services are provided by tribal governments. Then it says recipients may also provide these services to other populations, households, or geographic areas disproportionately impacted by the pandemic. And then identifying these disproportionately impacted communities, recipients should be able to support their determination for how the pandemic disproportionately impacted the populations, households, or geographic areas to be served.
I guess it's the same thing.
Same thing there. I don't have the other one up, so that I'm looking at the,
It sounds like it was,
It's exactly the same.
I think so.
okay, okay. Yeah, I should have pulled up to be able to tell you if I was reading the correct anything or not. So,
So, do we have any data in here? Says how many more people will get served? Got an idea, we're just trying to determine the eligible.
So one of the properties is the 8-plex. Plex in Sherman, so that's 8 apartments. We're reading an actual number.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
they had
This
a
was
lot of
a long,
information.
yeah, this was
There was a
a,
lot of
this
information.
was a big
so I
application,
missed
yeah.
it.
well, I think the ultimate goal is a campus.
Yeah.
So I think that this is the first, this is where they're gonna, they wanna start with their,
It's uses for land acquisition. I'm
Yes, so
sorry.
it does say we, on page 8. We also see an increase in the need for supportive housing during the first quarter of this year 21. We served 56 individuals in our housing programs. This year, we served 166 individuals during the first quarter. When we started our supported housing program in Story County last year, it was at capacity in less than 3 months. We currently have 10 housing units with 25 clients. At this time, more than 35 households on a regional waiting list qualify for supportive housing. 75% or 26 of these households are in Story County. I don't know that I've seen anything additional, but this is general data.
Question. So if funding is being requested for land acquisition. Is that an acceptable use, even though we're not building? Just acquiring the land.
Good question.
Good question. They will research. You're required.
Donna's question, I'm trying to figure out how to even tie getting land to COVID.
Because,
If
because
they're
of-
build on it.
because of the,
Right,
because of
but-
the project they're looking at, I think is how they're tying it to it, as far as
For expansion purposes, is that?
a,
They're
a,
building a campus.
a campus, right?
Yeah,
Right.
but
So how many properties are they wanting to buy here?
Numerous.
They only 8 flats, so they're.
they don't own the.
They don't own the,
Okay.
Acquisition of the place.
acquisition of 202 South Sherman. Oh, acquisition of 203.
Crucial to this says are the adjoining lots in conjunction with the eightplex.
Yes,
So their timeline shows groundbreaking in 2023 and grand opening in 2025. Grand opening,
So this is just for this 2.2 million is just for the land.
they're to purchase 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 properties. And then the rehabilitation of the eightplex. They do not own that eightplex.
right,
But they want to purchase it.
They want to
Right.
purchase it and
And
And then
renovate it.
it says demolition of 5 existing structures, so are there
So,
structures?
so if you look at some of their pictures,
Okay.
I think,
Houses.
I haven't seen the pictures, but
no, I
they
think,
should.
I think there's some blank lots involved here.
Okay. But there might be structures on some.
There are-
There are
there are
structures,
houses.
yes, there are houses.
yes, so
Yeah.
they would be demoing the houses,
houses, yeah.
keeping the from what I'm reading this, it looks like keeping the eightplex
Right,
and demoing everything else
right.
so that they could then build.
So that, so the ARPA money would go toward that.
And
The,
then they have the additional funding that they say they're gonna raise for the building of the campus.
and then the campus, that's their schedule there for
The
that.
12 million.
What's the campus? What's that? Is that in?
That would be the homeless
What's that?
shelter lots is what I understood it to be.
But, what'd you say? Sandra?
I was saying, I understood it to be a homeless shelter plus.
Some of these.
But my questions were general and had to do with how the project itself, whether or not it's consistent with the housing action plan that we're working on, and how it fits into the county's homelessness goals. Because we're dealing with some issues with homelessness right now, and that's not quite resolved yet. I'm just wondering how this fits into that.
Honestly. Buy these properties and rent the houses out cheaply. And have them be something that people can stay in rather
Are
than
they livable
transitional housing.
I'm pretty sure they're all rented out.
Are they
probably
rented out
now.
now? Okay.
I don't know. It looks to me, I mean, they don't look abandoned.
No, I mean, this is,
They might have some accessibility needs if they want to upgrade.
Well, that's what I mean, like, it would be good to, it would be nice to see the plan, what's the campus?
We will be including office space for other human service nonprofits. Currently, we have 6 human service agencies names collaborating with us.
So it kind of sounds like wanting to do a one-stop shop
Yep,
or, yeah, agencies that need larger space. That they would be collaborating in that. And
So
that's kind of how I'm reading that.
Rich Home has the ability to develop a campus type operation, allowing them to better meet the growing need in our community, deliver services and significantly more cost effectively. I'm not really sure with the whole,
doesn't have any capacities, it doesn't have how long, what kind of program, what kind of.
I think some of these we're gonna have to play a, think about them and have some other questions to do as we go through. I'm just looking at time, it is 4:35.
We could do one, I mean, it's up to them if they go do, or do we
Yeah.
just wait, we've got a date for tomorrow at 1 o'clock. I'm going through these.
Let's.
I'm thinking we just wait for tomorrow.
Are there any questions?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah,
I mean,
I,
we want to have time for that.
yeah, no, I will make time for that. Yes, I do want to make time for public comments. Thank you for
Yeah,
that. Yeah, so if there's folks online that have public comment, we're, please use the raise hand function, we can unmute you.
Oh, that was brutal, guys.
What's in the chat was it was difficult for people to hear.
Okay.
And just asking for some clarification and then we provided it. It was sharing screen. I was behind that.
On one of them, okay, okay.
Is that everything?
That's in, yeah, those were. Please explain, what are you saying, but Manova 15 info, building new housing.
You, she said thanks for the clarification. So that's there.
Okay. Were there any additional questions or comments? Like I said, if you're on Zoom and want to use the raise hand function. Or you could unmute yourself. If you have a. Okay, great, great. So I believe you're set for tomorrow at the same time. 1 p.m. Thank you, everybody, for staying a little bit longer and for all the detail and going through all of these. It certainly is not an
We actually went through
Easy
faster
process.
than I was hoping.
Yeah,
We spent the first hour or so on questions from the internals, so we should be able to get through that.
Right.
tomorrow.
right.
Right.
All right, great. We will adjourn this meeting.